I'm Barbara Wilson, 67, and I never thought my own daughter would become my jailer. After losing Frank, Kristen's concern seemed genuine, but it slowly morphed into something darker. The day she ripped my phone from my hands and smashed it on the floor, something inside me broke too. But that shattering sound also woke something up. My determination to reclaim my life. Before I tell you how my own daughter tried to control my life and what I did about it, let me know where you're watching from and subscribe to hear more stories about standing up for yourself, no matter your age. Frank and I had been married for 45 beautiful years when cancer took him 18 months ago. We'd built a life together in our two-story Craftsman with the wraparound porch where we'd shared morning coffee watching cardinals visit our bird feeders. After the funeral, the house felt cavernous, each room echoing with memories that both comforted and haunted me. My daughter Kristen was my rock during those first dark months. She'd stop by with groceries, help sort through Frank's belongings, and call daily just to check in. I was grateful for her support, especially when pneumonia landed me in the hospital for 3 days that winter. Nothing serious. Just my body's response to stress and grief, the doctor had said. But it scared Kristen more than it scared me. That hospital stay marked the beginning of the shift. When I returned home, I found Kristen had rearranged my kitchen for better accessibility. She'd moved everything from the upper cabinets to the lower ones, creating a chaotic system that made no sense to me. "Mom, you shouldn't be reaching overhead at your age," she explained when I questioned the changes. "What if you got dizzy and fell?" I'd never experienced dizziness in my life, but I bit my tongue. She meant well. The next week, she arrived with a medical alert necklace. "I don't need this, Kristen," I said, pushing it back across the kitchen table. "I'm perfectly capable of calling 911 if there's an emergency." "But what if you can't reach the phone?" Her voice had that edge to it. The one that reminded me of her teenage years when any disagreement was treated as a personal attack. "What if you fall in the shower? Dad's not here anymore to help you." The mention of Frank was a low blow, but effective. I took the necklace, though I stored it in my bedside drawer rather than wearing it. Soon, Kristen was calling 3, sometimes 4 times a day. She dropped by unannounced, often when I was in the middle of something. Reading, gardening, or on the phone with my sister in Florida. Each time she'd scan the house with critical eyes, pointing out potential hazards. The small rug in the hallway that could trip me, the steps tool I used to reach my favorite teacups, the extension cord running to my reading lamp. One afternoon, I mentioned to Kristen that I was thinking of taking a cooking class at the community center. "Is that really necessary?" she asked, frowning. "You already know how to cook, and those classes can be exhausting. Standing for hours isn't good for your joints." "It's Italian cuisine," I explained. "Something new to learn. Besides, it would be nice to meet some new people." "If you're lonely, I can come by more often," she offered, completely missing the point. "Or you could join us for dinner a few times a week." I didn't sign up for the class. It seemed easier to avoid the argument. My friend Judy noticed the change in me during our monthly lunch at Rosie's Diner. We'd been friends since our teaching days, both of us retiring from Lincoln Elementary 5 years apart. "You seem different, Barbara," she said, studying me over her coffee cup. "Quieter. Is everything okay?" I shrugged. "Just still adjusting to life without Frank." "No, it's more than that." Judy had never been one to let things slide. "You used to talk about your garden plans, that mystery novel you were writing, your travel bucket list. Now you barely mention anything beyond what Kristen thinks you should or shouldn't do." Her observation startled me. "That's not true. Kristen's just concerned about me living alone." "Concern is one thing," Judy said carefully. "Control is another. When was the last time you made a decision without wondering what Kristen would think?" I dismissed her words at the time, defending my daughter's intentions. But later that night I lay awake, replaying conversations with Kristen over the past few months. The subtle dismissals of my ideas, the way she spoke about me to others as if I weren't in the room, the decisions she made on my behalf without consultation. Still, I told myself she was grieving too. Frank had been her father, her hero. Perhaps her need to control my environment was really about protecting the only parent she had left. Understanding this, I continued to yield, to accommodate, to acquiesce, all to spare her additional pain. I didn't realize then how high the cost of this compassion would be. For both of us. My 67th birthday arrived on a crisp October day. Kristen insisted on hosting a small gathering at her house rather than mine, saying it would be less stressful for me. I'd actually been looking forward to entertaining in my own home again. Frank and I used to love hosting dinner parties, but I accepted her offer with forced gratitude. The celebration was pleasant enough on the surface. My grandson Tyler showed me his science project. My granddaughter Emma played a lovely piece on the piano she'd been practicing for weeks, and Kristen had prepared all my favorite foods. But something felt off about the evening, as if I were a guest rather than the guest of honor. While helping Kristen load the dishwasher after dessert, I overheard a conversation that made my heart drop. Kristen and her husband Tom were in the adjacent living room, speaking in hushed tones. "The realtor thinks we could list it by next month," Tom was saying. "Market's hot right now." "Good," Kristen replied. "I'm thinking we should get the guest house ready before winter sets in. Mom's place has those steep steps that are going to be dangerous when it snows." I stood frozen, dish towel in hand. They were talking about selling my house, my home, without even consulting me. When I confronted Kristen, she didn't even have the decency to look embarrassed. "Mom, we've been thinking about this for a while," she said, leading me to sit on the sofa as if I might collapse from the shock. "Your house is too big for just one person. The maintenance alone is going to become overwhelming. Our guest house is perfect. It's all on one level, and you'll be close enough that we can check on you daily." "Check on me?" I repeated. "Kristen, I don't need checking on. I'm perfectly capable of living independently. For now, maybe," she conceded in a tone that suggested she was humoring me. "But we need to think about the future. Dad would want us to plan ahead." The mention of Frank again, her trump card. "Your father respected my autonomy," I said quietly. "He would never make decisions about my life without my input." "Times are different now," Kristen insisted. "You're alone. We just want what's best for you. Shouldn't I be the one to decide what's best for me?" Tom shifted uncomfortably in his chair, but Kristen's expression hardened. "Sometimes people don't know what's best for themselves, Mom, especially as they get older." The drive home that night was silent, with tension hanging heavy between us. I could feel Kristen glancing at me periodically, perhaps waiting for me to concede the wisdom of her plans. I kept my eyes on the passing streetlights, each one illuminating a moment of clarity. This was about control, not care. I hoped the guest house conversation would be forgotten, but Kristen only intensified her campaign. Twice in the following week, she arrived at my door with different realtors, introducing them as friends who were just stopping by. They wandered through my home, examining crown molding and commenting on the potential of various spaces while I watched in stunned silence. My garden, which had been my sanctuary since Frank's passing, became a particular target. "All this maintenance is too much for you," Kristen declared, gesturing toward my beloved roses and hydrangeas. "When you move to our place, we can set up some simple potted plants that Tom can help manage." The intrusions grew more personal. I returned from grocery shopping one afternoon to find Kristen in my bedroom, reorganizing my closet. "What are you doing?" I asked, alarmed by the piles of clothing on my bed. "Just helping sort through some things," she answered without looking up. "You have clothes in here you haven't worn in years." Among the discard pile, I spotted the blue cardigan Frank had given me for our last anniversary together. I snatched it back, clutching it to my chest. "These are my things, Kristen. My memories. You don't get to decide what stays or goes." She softened momentarily. "I'm sorry, Mom. I just thought I was helping." But the very next week, she crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. I returned from having coffee with Judy to find Kristen in my home office, my private journal open in her hands. "What are you doing?" I gasped, mortified at the invasion. She didn't even have the grace to look ashamed. "I was looking for your insurance documents and found this instead." "Mom, some of the things you've written here are concerning. These entries about feeling lost without Dad, about not seeing the point sometimes. Those are private thoughts," I said, my voice shaking with anger as I took the journal from her hands. "Everyone has dark moments after losing a spouse of 45 years. Writing helps me process those feelings." But you never told me you felt this way. I'm worried about your mental state. My mental state is none of your business unless I choose to share it with you, I replied, feeling violated in a way I never had before. And for the record, those entries are from months ago. I'm in a much better place now. Or at least I was before I found you reading my private journal. When I tried to discuss boundaries later that week, explaining how her actions were making me feel diminished and disrespected, Kristen dismissed my concerns with a wave of her hand. You're being overly sensitive, Mom. This is what families do, we look out for each other. Dad always handled everything, and now that responsibility falls to me. Your stubborn independence isn't helping either of us. The word stubborn hung in the air between us. My desire to maintain basic adult autonomy was being characterized as a character flaw. In that moment, I realized how far things had deteriorated. The daughter I'd raised to be strong and independent now saw those same qualities in me as problems to be managed. By early spring, I felt suffocated by Kristen's oversight. Every decision, from what I ate for breakfast to what time I went to bed, seemed subject to her approval. I began to feel like a stranger in my own life, a spectator watching my autonomy erode day by day. It was during this time that my friend Judy suggested a week-long trip to Naples, Florida. Her sister owned a condo there and had offered it to us for a getaway. We could walk on the beach every morning, Judy enthused over lunch. There's a wonderful art community there, 2 galleries, studios, classes, and the seafood, Barbara. You'd love it. For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of genuine excitement. A change of scenery would do me good. Some distance from Kristen's watchful eye might help reset our relationship. Let's do it, I said impulsively. When can we go? I was thinking the last week of April. The weather's perfect then. Not too hot yet. That evening, I sat in my sunroom with my new smartphone, the latest model I'd treated myself to after my retirement bonus, researching flights to Florida. I'd just found a reasonable fare when I heard the front door open. Mom, Kristen's voice called out. She'd taken to using her emergency key with increasing frequency, rarely bothering to knock anymore. In the sunroom, I answered, not looking up from my phone. What are you doing? She asked, peering over my shoulder at the screen. Southwest Airlines? I explained about Judy's invitation, trying to infuse my voice with an enthusiasm that might be contagious. It's just a week. The condo has 2 bedrooms and it's in a secure building. We thought we'd go at the end of April. I watched Kristen's expression morph from surprise to concern to something harder to define. Mom, you can't be serious, she said finally. You haven't traveled since before Dad got sick. And Florida? It's so far. It's a 3-hour flight, I countered. I think I can manage that at the ripe old age of 67. It's not just the flight, she persisted. It's being so far from home, in an unfamiliar place. What if something happens? What if you need me? I'll have my phone. And Judy will be with me. Besides, nothing's going to happen. You don't know that. Kristen's voice rose slightly. Remember your pneumonia? That came out of nowhere. That was over a year ago, and I've been perfectly healthy since. Because I've been here making sure you're taking care of yourself. She began pacing the small sunroom. Honestly, Mom, this is exactly the kind of impulsive decision that worries me. You don't think things through. The accusation stung. I'd spent 30 years as an elementary school principal, making hundreds of decisions daily that affected children, staff, and an entire school community. The suggestion that I couldn't plan a simple vacation was absurd. Kristen, I said firmly, I'm going to Florida with Judy. I appreciate your concern, but this isn't up for debate. She stopped pacing and stared at me, as if seeing a stranger. Then, in a movement so swift I had no time to react, she snatched my phone from my hands. You don't understand the risks, she said, her voice rising. You're not thinking clearly. Give me back my phone, Kristen, I demanded, standing up. You're being ridiculous. I'm being ridiculous? Her face flushed with anger. You're the one acting like a teenager, making rash decisions without considering the consequences. What would Dad say if he knew I let you fly off to Florida with no proper planning? Your father would say it's my life and my decision, I retorted, reaching for the phone. Now give it back. What happened next played out in slow motion, yet was over in seconds, Kristen stepped back, holding my phone high as if I were a child trying to grab a forbidden toy. Then, with deliberate force, she threw it down. The sound of the screen shattering against my hardwood floor seemed to echo through the house. "You won't need this anymore," she said, her voice dripping with contempt. "I'll decide what's best for you." We both stood frozen, staring at the broken phone between us. I felt something break inside me too. The last thread of patience, of understanding, of making excuses for her behavior. "Get out," I whispered. "Mom, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have." "Get out of my house," I repeated louder this time. "Now." "You're overreacting," she said, but I could see regret washing over her face. "I'll buy you a new phone. We can discuss Florida when you're calmer." "There's nothing to discuss. Leave, Kristen. Use the key you seem to think gives you the right to barge in any time. And lock the door behind you." After a moment of tense silence, she left, her awkward apology hanging in the air between us. I heard the front door close, then the sound of her car starting in the driveway. Only when I was certain she was gone did I allow myself to sink back into my chair, shaking with a mixture of shock and rage. I sat there for hours as darkness fell, staring at my shattered phone on the floor. The black screen cracked like a spider's web. The broken device seemed to symbolize everything that had gone wrong between Kristen and me. Communication destroyed, boundaries violated, respect shattered. That night I barely slept. I kept replaying the incident, along with dozens of smaller moments that had led to it. The gradual erosion of my independence. The subtle and not so subtle ways Kristen had appointed herself the parent in our relationship. By morning I knew what I had to do. It wasn't just about the phone or the Florida trip anymore. It was about reclaiming my life before there was nothing left of it that truly belonged to me. The morning light streaming through my bedroom window found me already awake, my mind clear despite the sleepless night. I'd made my decision. If Kristen wanted to treat me like a child, I would show her exactly what I was capable of. My first call was to Judy, using my rarely used landline. I explained what had happened with the phone and my plan to leave for a while. "Are you sure about this, Barbara?" Judy asked after I laid out my intentions. "Disappearing will devastate her. Sometimes a shock is the only way to break through denial," I replied. "She needs to understand that I'm a person with rights, not a possession to be managed." "Where will you go?" "I'd rather not say over the phone. The less you know, the easier it will be if Kristen questions you. Just trust that I'll be safe and I'll contact you when I'm settled." After hanging up, I made a list. If I was going to do this, it needed to be methodical. No impulsive decisions, as Kristen would say. The irony wasn't lost on me. My first stop was the bank. Margaret, the manager who had known Frank and me for decades, raised an eyebrow when I asked to withdraw a significant amount in cash. "Planning a big purchase, Barbara?" she asked, clearly concerned. "A trip," I said simply. "And I'll need to move some funds to my personal account, the one that doesn't have Kristen's name on it." Margaret nodded slowly. "Frank always said you were the prudent one," she remarked as she processed my requests. Next, I visited Sarah, my attorney. I'd called ahead, explaining I needed to update my will and power of attorney documents urgently. "I want to be clear about this," Sarah said after I explained the situation. "You're not removing Kristen as beneficiary, just ensuring she can't make decisions for you, while you're still competent to make them yourself." "Exactly," I confirmed. "I love my daughter, but I need to establish boundaries. The current arrangements give her too much control." We spent an hour reviewing and signing documents. Before I left, Sarah handed me her personal cell number. "Call me if you need anything, Barbara." "Anytime." The mobile phone store was my next destination. The young man behind the counter, his name tag read Jason, helped me select a new smartphone. "And you want to keep your old number private?" he clarified as he set up the new device. "Yes," I confirmed. "I'll give the new number to people I trust, but I need the old line to remain active for now." While Jason worked, I thought about what else I needed to do. Kristen would be at work until 5, teaching high school English, just as I had before moving into administration. That gave me several hours to prepare. At home, I packed methodically. Clothes for different weather conditions, medications, important documents, and a few precious mementos. The small wooden box containing Frank's wedding ring, our favorite photo from our anniversary trip to Yellowstone, and the journal Kristen had violated. As I moved through the house selecting items with care, I was struck by how liberated I felt. Each chosen possession represented a deliberate decision, my decision. For months, I'd been living in a state of defensive reaction to Kristen's control. Now I was taking action. Before leaving, I sat at my desk to write a note. I wanted to be careful, clear enough to prevent Kristen from calling the police, vague enough to give me the space I needed. After several attempts, I settled on, I need space to think. Don't worry about me. Simple. Direct. And I hoped enough to make her reflect on why her mother would feel the need to disappear. As I sealed the envelope, memories of Kristen as a child flooded back. Her determination to tie her own shoes. Her insistence on choosing her own clothes, even when the combinations were hilariously mismatched. I can do it myself, Mommy, she'd declare, chin raised in that stubborn way that both frustrated and delighted me. When had our roles reversed so dramatically? When had her natural independence transformed into this need to control? And when had I begun to surrender my own autonomy so completely? These questions would need to wait. The afternoon was advancing, and I had one more call to make. Meredith answered on the third ring. We'd been roommates in college but had gradually lost touch over the years, connecting mainly through Christmas cards and occasional social media comments. The pandemic had actually rekindled our friendship through weekly Zoom calls, a practice we'd maintained even after restrictions lifted. Barbara. What a lovely surprise. Her warm voice carried across the miles from her home in Sedona, Arizona. Meredith, I began, suddenly emotional. I have an unusual request. I explained my situation, asking if I could visit for a while, perhaps a few weeks. To her credit, Meredith didn't hesitate. My guest room is yours for as long as you need it, she assured me. When should I expect you? Tomorrow evening, I said, feeling both terrified and exhilarated by the reality of my plan. I'll text you the flight details once I've booked them. My last task was arranging for my house to be looked after. My neighbor Gerald, a retired widower who had always been kind, agreed to collect my mail and keep an eye on the place. No need to mention this to anyone who might ask about me, I added casually as we finished our conversation on his front porch. Gerald's eyes twinkled knowingly. Your business is your business, Barbara. I respect that. With everything in place, I called a taxi rather than my usual rideshare app. Another small measure to make my trail harder to follow. As the car pulled away from the curb, I glanced back at my home, wondering when I would see it again. My first night away was spent in an airport hotel under my maiden name. A small act of subterfuge that gave me a surprising thrill. After checking in, I called Dorothy, another former colleague who had remained close with both Kristen and me. I need you to do something for me, I said after exchanging pleasantries. Kristen will likely call you tomorrow very upset. Please assure her I'm safe, but don't share any details of this conversation. Barbara, what's going on? Dorothy's concern was evident. A necessary reset, I replied. Trust me on this, please. Dorothy sighed. Kristen called me last week, you know. She's worried about your declining judgment. She mentioned something about power of attorney papers. This revelation shouldn't have surprised me, yet it felt like another betrayal. Kristen had been building a case behind my back, talking to my friends about my supposed mental decline. All the more reason for what I'm doing, I said quietly. Will you help me? Of course, Dorothy promised. Be careful, Barbara. That night, alone in the anonymous hotel room, I experienced a roller coaster of emotions. Guilt over causing Kristen worry, righteous anger at her controlling behavior, fear about my uncertain future, and underneath it all, a growing sense of excitement. For the first time since Frank's death, I was making a bold choice entirely for myself. Tomorrow would bring a new beginning, and whatever challenges came with it, I would face them on my own terms. The flight to Phoenix was smooth, the Arizona sky a vast, welcoming blue as the plane descended. Something about the landscape below, those red rocks rising from the desert floor, the vastness of the horizon, spoke to the freedom I was seeking. I'd left behind the familiar greens and compact neighborhoods of Pennsylvania for something entirely different. A clean slate. Meredith waited at the arrival gate, her silver hair cut in a stylish bob I didn't recognize from our video calls. She enveloped me in a hug that erased the 50 years since we'd shared a college dorm room. "Look at you," she said, holding me at arm's length. "Still Barbara Thompson underneath it all." "Thompson Wilson," I corrected with a smile, though I knew what she meant. Somewhere during the flight, I'd begun to reconnect with the young woman I'd been before becoming wife, mother, principal, before all the roles that had defined me for decades. The drive to Sedona took us through scenery that looked like another planet compared to my lush Pennsylvania neighborhood. Towering red rock formations caught the late afternoon light, glowing like embers against the deepening blue sky. "It's breathtaking," I murmured, rolling down the window to feel the dry sage-scented air. "Wait until you see the sunsets," Meredith promised. "They'll make you believe in magic again." Her home was a modest adobe-style house nestled among junipers, with a covered patio facing what she informed me was Courthouse Butte. The guest room had its own entrance and a small private patio. More privacy than I'd had in months with Kristen's constant intrusions. "I've got a green chili stew going," Meredith said as she helped me settle in. "Nothing fancy but good for the soul. You must be exhausted from traveling." The simple kindness, offering food without commentary about my nutritional needs or dietary restrictions, brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "Thank you," I managed, "for everything." That evening, as we sat on her patio watching the rocks change color with the setting sun, I received a text from Dorothy on my new phone. "Kristen called. Frantic. Found your note. Called police but they say no evidence of foul play. Won't file missing person report yet. Says you're not answering your phone. I said I'm sure you're fine but don't know where you are. Be prepared, she's on the warpath." I showed Meredith the message, my stomach nodding with a complex mixture of guilt and vindication. "Are you having second thoughts?" she asked gently. I considered the question seriously. "No," I said finally. "I feel bad that she's worried, but she needs to understand that her behavior has consequences. That I'm a person, not a possession." "And what happens next in this grand plan of yours?" I laughed softly. "Honestly, I haven't thought beyond getting here. For the first time in too long, I don't have every moment planned and accounted for." "Well then," Meredith raised her wine glass, "to improvisation." The next few days passed in a gentle rhythm unlike anything I'd experienced since Frank's illness. I slept late, something Kristen would have interpreted as a sign of depression rather than simple pleasure. Meredith and I took morning walks before the desert heat intensified, exploring trails that wound among the red rocks. In the afternoons, I read books I'd been meaning to get to for years, napped without guilt, or sat quietly watching the light change on the landscape. No one monitored my medication schedule or questioned my food choices. No one suggested activities that were more appropriate for someone my age. The absence of supervision was intoxicating. A week into my stay, Meredith suggested I join her at a local art class. "I'm terrible at it," she admitted with a laugh. "But the people are wonderful, and the instructor, Raphael, is both talented and patient. Many of us are, shall we say, chronologically gifted." The class met in a bright studio with spectacular views of Cathedral Rock. The other students, mostly retirees like me, welcomed me warmly. Raphael, a soft-spoken man with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes, set me up with a canvas and basic supplies. "Just play today," he suggested.
No expectations.
I hadn't picked up a paintbrush since mandatory art classes in high school, but something about the space and the light and the freedom from judgment loosened something inside me. My first attempts were hesitant, awkward dabs of color that bore little resemblance to the landscape I was attempting to capture. "Color is good," Raphael commented, pausing behind me. "Don't be afraid of it. Feel the red, don't just see it." By the end of the 2-hour session, I had produced something that, while not technically accomplished, captured something of the emotion the landscape stirred in me. The act of creation of making something that hadn't existed before filled me with a satisfaction I hadn't experienced in years. "You're coming back next week, right?" asked Gloria, a vivacious 70-something with magenta-streaked white hair who had sat up next to me. "I'd like to," I replied, surprised by how much I meant it. "Good," she nodded decisively. "We need more new blood." And Raphael thinks you have a good eye. That evening, I received another update from Dorothy. Kristen had been calling mutual friends, my former colleagues, even my doctor, building what Dorothy described as a case for my mental instability. She's convinced you've had some kind of breakdown, Dorothy wrote. Says the trip you were planning to Florida was evidence of erratic behavior. The news should have angered me, but instead, I felt a strange calm. The contrast between my actual mental state, increasingly peaceful and centered, and Kristen's narrative about me was so stark as to be almost comical. For the first time, I truly laughed about the situation, startling Meredith, who was preparing dinner. "What's so funny?" she asked. "My daughter thinks I'm having a breakdown," I explained, showing her Dorothy's message. "Meanwhile, I'm probably more mentally healthy than I've been in 2 years." Meredith's expression grew serious. "You know, at some point, you'll need to contact her directly. Not for her sake, but for yours." "I know," I sighed. "But not yet. I'm just starting to remember who I am without her constant input." The days stretched into weeks. I joined a senior hiking group that took gentle morning walks through the Red Rock country. I attended Raphael's art class twice weekly, gradually developing a style that leaned toward expressionism, bold colors and strong emotions rather than precise representation. I made friends who knew nothing about my past, who saw me simply as Barbara, not as Frank's widow or Kristen's mother or the retired principal. My body grew stronger from the regular walking. My mind cleared, unburdened by the constant need to justify my choices. I began to recognize the woman in the mirror again. Not just physically but essentially. The spark in my eyes had returned. 1 month into my stay, I received a text from Judy. She found the gallery listing. "She knows you're in Arizona." The message referred to something I'd forgotten. Raphael had included one of my paintings in a community exhibition of his students' work. My name was in the printed program and on the gallery's website. It had been a proud moment for me, seeing my art displayed publicly for the first time. Now it had become the breadcrumb that would lead Kristen to me. "Are you ready for this?" Meredith asked when I shared the news. I took a deep breath, looking out at the sunset painting the rocks in shades of orange and pink. "Yes," I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. "It's time." The gallery opening was scheduled for Friday evening. Raphael's students had spent the week helping arrange the exhibition space, hanging our work with professional care. My painting, an interpretation of Cathedral Rock at sunset, rendered in bold strokes of crimson, orange, and deep purple, hung in a prominent position that both honored and terrified me. "You've captured something essential," Raphael had said when he selected it. "Not just what the rock looks like, but how it feels to stand before it." The evening of the opening, I dressed with care in a flowing turquoise tunic Meredith had helped me select from a local boutique. Something I would never have chosen in my previous life, but which felt right for the person I was becoming. "Nervous?" Meredith asked as we drove to the gallery. "About the exhibition?" "A little," I admitted. "About Kristen?" "Surprisingly, no. I feel ready." The gallery was already crowded when we arrived. Local art lovers, tourists, and the families and friends of Raphael's students mingled among the displayed works, sipping wine and engaging in animated conversations. I moved through the space, accepting congratulations and discussing my process with genuine pleasure. It was during a conversation with an elderly couple from Tucson that I felt it, that prickling awareness of being watched. I turned slowly, scanning the room, and there she was. Kristen stood near the entrance, her face a mask of conflicting emotions. Relief, anger, confusion. Our eyes met across the crowded gallery. Neither of us moved for a long moment. Then deliberately, I excused myself from the conversation and walked toward my daughter. "Hello, Kristen," I said when I reached her. My voice was steady, giving nothing away of the emotional tumult beneath. "Mom." Her voice cracked slightly. "What are you doing here? Do you have any idea what you've put me through?" Several nearby conversations paused as people turned to look at us. I gently took her elbow, guiding her toward a quieter corner. "This isn't the place for this conversation," I said quietly. "I'm in the middle of my art exhibition. We can talk after." "Art exhibition?" she repeated incredulously. "You disappear for a month, Leave me thinking you might be dead in a ditch somewhere. And now you're talking about an art exhibition like nothing happened? I left you a note, I reminded her. You knew I was safe. I need space to think is not an explanation. Her voice rose despite her evident effort to control it. I called the police. I've been out of my mind with worry. I studied my daughter's face, the dark circles under her eyes, the tension lines around her mouth. She had suffered, yes, but there was something else there too. A fundamental disbelief that I could have orchestrated this disappearance, that I could have managed without her. The exhibition ends at 9, I said firmly. There's a cafe 2 doors down. Meet me there and we'll talk properly. For a moment I thought she might refuse, might create the scene I was trying to avoid. Then her shoulders slumped slightly. Fine. 9 o'clock. Thank you, I said, then added. My painting is over there if you'd like to see it while you wait. I rejoined Meredith, who had been watching from a discreet distance. Round 1 survived, I murmured. She looks like she doesn't know whether to hug you or strangle you, Meredith observed. That makes 2 of us. The remainder of the evening passed in a blur of conversations and congratulations. Raphael sold 3 paintings, including, to my astonishment, mine. I caught glimpses of Kristen throughout the evening, moving restlessly around the gallery, studying my painting for long minutes, watching me interact with my new friends with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. At 9, as the event wound down, I found Meredith. Will you be okay getting home? This might take a while. She squeezed my hand. Take all the time you need. Call if you want me to pick you up later. The cafe was quiet, with only a few tables occupied. Kristen had secured a corner booth, a cup of coffee cooling in front of her. I slid into the seat across from her, ordering herbal tea when the server approached. We sat in tense silence until the tea arrived. Then Kristen spoke, her voice tight with controlled emotion. Why did you do this? Why did you just vanish? I wrapped my hands around the warm mug, gathering my thoughts. What do you remember about the last time we were together? She frowned. We had an argument about your Florida trip. I lost my temper. I apologize for breaking your phone. Is that all you think happened? What else is there? You overreacted to an argument by disappearing for a month. I took a slow sip of tea, determined to maintain my composure. Kristen, you didn't just break my phone. You said, you won't need this anymore. I'll decide what's best for you. Do you remember saying those words? She shifted uncomfortably. I was upset. I didn't mean it literally. But it wasn't just words, was it? You've been taking over my life piece by piece since your father died. Making decisions for me. Talking about me to my friends and doctor behind my back. Planning to sell my house without my consent. That's not fair, she protested. I've been trying to help you. By treating me like I'm incapable of managing my own life? By dismissing my wishes? By reading my private journal? Kristen flinched at the last example. I was worried about you. After Dad died, you were so lost. Someone needed to step up and take care of things. I was grieving, I corrected. That's different from being incompetent. Yes, I was sad, devastated actually. But that didn't mean I needed to surrender my autonomy. So you ran away to punish me? Anger flashed in her eyes again. No, I said gently. I left to save myself. And maybe our relationship too. The path we were on wasn't healthy for either of us. She fell silent, staring into her coffee. When she spoke again, her voice had lost its defensive edge. I was so scared when I couldn't find you. I kept imagining the worst. I'm sorry for that part, I said sincerely. I didn't want to cause you pain, but I needed to show you that I am still capable, still independent. And I needed to remember that for myself too. So what now? You're just living in Arizona? Painting? What about your house, your life back home? I don't know yet, I admitted. I'm figuring it out as I go. But for the first time since your father died, I feel like myself again. I'm making my own choices, finding new interests, building a community here. Kristen's eyes filled with tears. I was just trying to protect you. After losing Dad, I couldn't bear the thought of losing you too. And there it was, the core truth beneath all the controlling behavior. Fear. The same fear I'd felt watching her ride a bike without training wheels for the first time, Start kindergarten, drive a car, leave for college. The heart-stopping terror that comes with loving someone so much that the thought of them coming to harm is unbearable. Oh, Kristen. I reached across the table to take her hand. You can't protect me from life, or from the inevitable. None of us knows how much time we have. But we can choose how we spend that time. I don't want to live in a bubble of safety that slowly suffocates me. I never meant to suffocate you, she whispered. I know. Your intentions were good. But the effect was harmful nonetheless. We talked for hours, delving into fears and resentments that had been building since Frank's death. Kristen admitted that watching her father's decline had terrified her. She transferred that fear to me, interpreting normal aging and grieving as signs of deterioration that required intervention. I think I needed to believe I could control things, she confessed. After watching Dad slip away despite all the doctors, all the treatments, I felt so helpless. Taking charge of your life gave me the illusion that I could prevent another loss. For my part, I acknowledged that I'd enabled the dynamic by yielding to her increasingly controlling behavior, choosing conflict avoidance over honest communication. We both made mistakes, I concluded as midnight approached. The question is where we go from here. Kristen wiped her eyes with a napkin. Are you coming home? Not yet, I said gently. I need more time here. This place, these people. They're helping me rediscover parts of myself I'd forgotten. I'm not ready to leave. Though disappointment flashed across her face, she nodded slowly. I understand. Or I'm trying to. That's all I ask. As we prepared to leave, Kristen asked hesitantly, Can I visit again before I fly home? Maybe you could show me some of those hiking trails you mentioned. And I'd like to meet your friends. The request, so different from her previous insistence on managing my activities, warmed my heart. I'd like that very much. We parted with a long hug outside the cafe, both of us teary but with a new understanding between us. As I watched her walk to her rental car, I felt a profound shift in our relationship. Not a complete resolution but a beginning. We were finding our way back to mother and daughter, rather than caretaker in charge. The road ahead wouldn't be simple or straight, but for the first time in too long, I believed we were heading in the right direction. 6 months after my disappearance, Arizona had become more than a refuge. It had become home. The guest room in Meredith's house had given way to a small rental cottage near the art center, where floor-to-ceiling windows framed the red rock vistas that continued to inspire my painting. What had begun as a therapeutic hobby had evolved into something more substantial. Raphael had taken me under his wing, providing private instruction that helped refine my natural expressionistic style. 3 more of my paintings had sold at local galleries, and I'd been commissioned to create a piece for the lobby of a new eco-resort in Sedona. "You've found your voice," Raphael remarked during one of our sessions. "Not just in art, but in life. It shows in your work." He was right. The timid, careful woman who had arrived in Sedona half a year earlier had been transformed. My circle of friends expanded beyond Meredith to include Gloria from art class, Terrence and Walter, a retired couple who led the senior hiking group, Irene, a former corporate lawyer who now taught yoga, and a dozen others who accepted me exactly as I was, with no preconceived notions or expectations. My relationship with Kristen had undergone its own transformation. After our confrontation at the gallery, she had stayed in Sedona for 3 more days. We hiked together, shared meals with Meredith, and continued our conversations about boundaries and respect. Before leaving, she had asked, "Will you at least start answering your phone when I call?" The question contained both humor and vulnerability. "Yes," I promised. "As long as you remember I might be busy painting or hiking or just living my life." "Fair enough," she'd agreed. In the months since, we'd established a new pattern. Weekly video calls kept us connected without the suffocating oversight that had characterized our earlier relationship. When Kristen offered suggestions now, they were presented as options rather than directives. When she expressed concern, it came from a place of love rather than control. In April, she and her family, Tom and the kids, visited for spring break. Watching my grandchildren explore the red rocks, seeing Kristen relax into the natural beauty of the landscape, reinforced that I had made the right decision for all of us. "Mom, this place suits you," Kristen observed one evening as we sat on my patio, watching the sunset paint the rocks in breathtaking hues of orange and pink. "I've never seen you so vibrant." "I feel vibrant," I admitted. "More alive than I have in years." During their visit, we addressed the practical matters we had been postponing. With Kristen's support, I decided to sell my Pennsylvania house. The process was bittersweet. That home held 40 years of memories with Frank, but it also felt right. The past was precious, but it shouldn't be an anchor preventing me from moving forward. "Dad would approve," Kristen said as we sorted through family photos to ship to Arizona. "He always said you were the adventurous one." He was right, I smiled, remembering Frank's fond exasperation when I'd suggest spontaneous road trips or late-night stargazing. He was my rock, but I was his wings. The house sold quickly, to a young family with 3 children who fell in love with the garden I had tended for decades. Rather than feeling bereft, I felt a sense of continuity, imagining new memories being created within those familiar walls. With the proceeds from the sale, I purchased a small condo in Sedona, close enough to Kristen's home in Pennsylvania for regular visits, but maintaining the independent life I had built. The condo was modern and low maintenance, with a small patio where I could set up an easel and continue painting amid the inspirational landscape. On moving day, as I arranged my belongings in my new permanent home, I found the journal that had been at the center of one of our worst conflicts. I hadn't written in it since leaving Pennsylvania, having found other outlets for my thoughts and feelings. Curious, I opened to the entries Kristen had discovered. The dark days after Frank's death when grief had overwhelmed me. The pain reflected in those pages seemed distant now, like reading about someone else's life. Healing had come, not through being protected from my feelings, but by moving through them toward something new. I decided to start a fresh journal, beginning with the day I had fled Pennsylvania. The contrast between then and now would serve as a reminder of how far I had come, and how necessary that difficult choice had been. As summer approached, bringing with it the intense Arizona heat, I reflected on the lessons of the past year. The journey from grief to rebirth hadn't been linear or easy. It had required a painful rupture, a period of isolation, and the courage to rebuild on new terms. For Kristen, the lessons had been equally profound. She had confronted her fear of loss and recognized how it had manifested as control. She had learned to see me as a complete person with agency and rights, not just as her mother needing protection. Most importantly, she had discovered that love expressed through respect was stronger than love expressed through management. During our weekly call, I shared these reflections with her. "I think about that day a lot," she admitted, meaning the phone smashing incident that had catalyzed everything. "I still feel ashamed." "Don't," I said sincerely. In a strange way, it was a gift. Without that moment, we might have continued down that unhealthy path indefinitely. Sometimes relationships need an earthquake to reset the foundation. "Pretty expensive earthquake," she joked weakly. "Worth every penny," I assured her. As we ended the call, Kristen mentioned her upcoming birthday. "Nothing fancy this year," she said. "Just family dinner at home. But I'd love it if you could come." "I wouldn't miss it," I promised. After hanging up, I sat on my patio watching the light change on the red rocks as afternoon faded toward evening. A hummingbird darted among the native plants I'd established in containers, its wings a blur of motion and purpose. Like that tiny bird, I had found unexpected strength within myself. The power to hover, to dart sideways, to change direction when necessary. To build a new nest when the old one no longer served. At 67, an age when many believed decline was inevitable, I had instead discovered renewal. Not through denying the realities of aging or avoiding its challenges, but by facing them on my own terms, with dignity and agency intact. I thought of all the women my age who might be facing similar struggles with well-meaning children, with societal expectations, with their own internalized beliefs about what was possible in the latter chapters of life. I wished I could share with them what I had learned. That it's never too late to reclaim your voice, to insist on your right to self-determination, to begin again. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in a finale of spectacular color, I felt profound gratitude for the crisis that had forced change, for the courage to embrace it, and for the daughter who had grown alongside me through the process. The phone incident had indeed been a shattering moment. But like the Japanese art of kintsugi, where broken pottery is mended with gold to create something more beautiful than the original, our broken relationship had been repaired with something precious. Truth, respect, and a deeper understanding of what it means to truly love someone enough to let them be free. So what about you? Have you ever had to take a dramatic step to reclaim your independence, or reset a relationship that had become unhealthy? Or perhaps you're on the other side, worried about an aging parent and struggling to find the balance between care and control? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Remember, it's never too late to rewrite the story of your life. Sometimes all it takes is the courage to turn the page. Thank you for listening, and until next time, may you find the wisdom to let go and the courage to begin again.